What's up, everyone? I hope you are doing fantastically well today. This is Raphael Garcia here on Thursday, July 23rd for episode 64 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Thank you for joining me when you listen to this content. Please be sure to like and share this across all of your social media channels, and I appreciate you doing so to continue to support us in this work that we are doing here. As always, there are multiple places you can find us across the interwebs. My name, first and foremost, is R. Garcia Sports on both Instagram and Twitter. You can catch all of my content being shared on those two platforms. MMAratings.net is our flagship, where we write about mixed martial arts mainly. Sometimes some professional wrestling and boxing is thrown in as well, or are thrown in as well. You can catch us at MMA on Instagram and Twitter for our social media space, and YouTube for this podcast and our Tuesday podcast, MMA Ratings podcast, which is myself and Shawan Humes. Always talking about MMA, combat sports. We usually talk about a little bit of wrestling and some other shenanigans mixed in there. Two, you can catch us on Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and Anchor, and Spotify as well. So thank you again. Take the time to check us out across all of those channels. Tonight, I am going to be taking another look at another week of professional wrestling, mainly talking about WWE and AEW, with a couple of listener questions. We added that in this week for the first time. So let's go ahead and jump on in, where we're going to probably go for about 30, 40 minutes tops today. I don't think I'll be on too long, but you never know how that may go. So the first thing we're talking about is the continued slide of WWE and its ratings. And I know ratings aren't the most exciting conversation to have when it comes to professional wrestling, but I think we're at a time where it's beginning to show something bigger within the WWE. As this week Raw hit 1.62 million, which is a little bit higher than the 1.5 that they did last week, but it's an all-time low in the demo of 0.46, the 18 to 39 euro demo. And yeah, those are bad numbers. And they're bad numbers because they are dropping lower and lower. Like if you look back to where they started 2020, they were at 2.3 million. This time last year, they were at 2.1, so they were a little bit, they went up a bump. But in 2018, they were at 2.4 to 2.7. So their ratings have almost dropped by half, close enough to half in like 2 years times. And if you look back further than that, I think it was like 2015, they were doing like a 4 at that time. And yeah, the threes or fours. And those are some dismal numbers. And I don't want to belabor this too much because we're going to talk about it. I actually just wrote about it. But what I think is important to capture here is that WWE is failing itself and its fans because they are failing to plan. And what I see week in and week out is you have 3 hours of content on Mondays, 2 hours on Wednesdays, and then 2 hours on Fridays, and you almost have no idea what you're going to see heading into the show. Monday, they were taping the show around 2 or 3 o'clock. Now, this is for a show that starts at 8, and they're taping it at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that lets you know that they had no idea what was being planned for the show, no idea what was going on until the final minutes of production, which is so unfortunate for an organization that's this massive, this established, to not have any idea of what was going on in their planning. And it doesn't have to be like that. WWE has one of the biggest platforms in entertainment. They have 63 million viewers on YouTube, 63 million subscribers, excuse me. They have 10 million followers on Twitter. Let me see how many they have on Instagram. I'm going to guess at least 5. Let me see. But all of these millions of followers, and they could easily promote massive shows in such a way that would blow. They have 21 million subscribers on YouTube. 21 million. So those are some huge numbers. If you think about it, AEW has 500,000 followers on Instagram. They have 1 million followers, or excuse me, 500,000 followers on Twitter, 1 million, 1.6 on YouTube. They have such a small platform compared to the WWE, but they're using it so much better to establish their names or establish people to watch and get you excited about the next week's edition of content. They only have 2 hours of content to produce, but they have you can see that they've planned so much further in advance in a way that is running circles around WWE and it's showing in the ratings week in and week out. They aren't planning anything. They're failing themselves and it's really stagnant in that situation. And you can see where it's worked, where planning has worked for them. Because if you look back to the 2 weeks that Sasha and Bayley were on NXT, then mixed in with that are 2 weeks in which Keith Lee was promoted as a big attraction. They had his three-way match with Finn Balor and who was the other guy? Finn Balor and Johnny Gargano. And then they had the title match with him and Adam Cole. Of those 4 weeks, WWE won 3 of them. They won the 2 with Sasha and Bayley, and then the one where NXT, the North American title, was on the line. The one where, no, excuse me, they won 4. Let me double check. I think they won 4 of those weeks. Let me pull that number back up because I was just looking at that. Let me see. So in this month, well, this is from June to July, but June 24th. Actually, let me go back to June 17th. June 17th, NXT was at 746, AEW was at 772. June 24th, this was the week where Sasha and Bayley faced off against Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. They won 780 NXT at 786 to AEW 633. The next week was Keith Lee against actually no, hold on, I think I got that wrong. No, okay. 617, that was the week where Sasha and Bayley went up against Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. The next week, the 24th, that's where Keith Lee defended his NXT North American title. On July 1st, that's when Sasha Banks faced off against Io Shirai. That one was 792 to 748 for NXT. Then the following week was Keith Lee winning the title, and that was 759 to 715. In the 2 weeks since then, on the 15th, they had the main match was Io Shirai versus Tegan Nox. They lost that 631 to 788. And then this past week, they lost 615 to 845. My big belief is the reason why that gap is growing is because once the 15th came around, they stopped planning. That, like, the only match that was really kind of promoted for that night was the main event of Shirai versus Nox. Nothing else was really talked about on that card. And part of that is also the drawing power that Sasha Banks and Bayley bring with them. But they're not doing themselves any favors by not talking about anything that's coming on that Wednesday show. AEW has already promoted 4 to 5 matches for Dynamite next week. Forget about what we'll hear about on Dark or what'll be planned by then, but they have 2 title matches, a tag team tornado match, and then they just announced a 10-man tag as well, and I think there's something else I'm getting in there too. But all those matches they are already promoting, and they were basically promoting when their night ended on Wednesday. WWE, we know about one match for next week. We know about the Finn Balor versus Timothy Thatcher versus I don't even know who the third guy is, but we know about that ladder match that's coming up. Outside of that, there's nothing announced, and I'm sure that they're not going to have any idea what they are planning to do in any way, shape, or form that will allow them to promote it with enough time. And that's what's killing them. And their creative process is 100% stagnant. Right now, we know that the issue is the creative team. They're old, their ideas are old, and they refuse to infuse anything different. Vince McMahon is 75 years old, I believe. Bruce Pritchard is 57. I don't know how old Kevin Dunn is, but these guys are all in their 50s, and they're the decision makers when it comes to this content. That's why you see the Big Show and Randy Orton having an unsanctioned match as the main event of Raw on Monday, and that's why that main event number was so bad compared to the rest of the show and compared to his historical numbers. Nobody wants to watch that. No, I don't. I've never been a Randy Orton fan. I've never been a Big Show fan either. And there's no way in hell you can tell me that in 2020 I would rather sit and watch those two guys put on a match rather than anything else almost a majority of that roster can do. Give me Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre or Bobby Lashley and somebody else like that. The match with the 6-man tag with Ricochet, Cedric, and Ali versus the Hurt Business, that was much better in every way, shape, or form, and that could have been a better main event, in my opinion. That would have had people more excited. And something Raj Gary over at Wrestling Inc. always talks about is how people remember how the show ended before they remember everything else. And ending on a higher note would have been fantastic for Raw, but instead they ended on Big Show and Randy Orton, and that's just a fart in the wind to me. But as I like to do with this show, I don't want to complain about wrestling so much. I don't want to talk about it in such a bad light. So these are some of the things from WWE content that I liked this week. So first is Karrion Kross, who looked like an absolute killer on Wednesday. His match with Dominic Dijakovic was great. I loved it. I loved the finish when he's beating the hell out of Dominic right in front of Keith Lee, trying to force Keith to get involved while Dominic's pleading with him not to. It's almost the Rocky 3 opening all over again, where Rocky has the towel and he could have saved Apollo, but he didn't, and Apollo gets killed by Ivan Drago. It's basically all over again. So now we know we're getting Karrion Kross versus Keith Lee at some point in time. And I saw a tweet from Jay Leto over that, I think at PWP Nation, which was really spot on, that you you as a viewer, you have no idea how WWE is going to book Karrion Kross versus Keith Lee. You have no idea. I do not want to see Keith Lee lose that title to Karrion Kross immediately out the gate. That's why I was hoping they would go in another direction, but instead they just had Keith Lee relinquish the NXT North American title, which I thought was stupid. But I hope, and I'm hoping upon all hope, that they don't have Keith Lee lose to Karrion Kross right out the gate. I hope that he wins that match and they set up something long term with him. I don't mind the idea of Karrion being the one to take the title off of Lee, but I really want him to have like a good solid 5 to 6 month reign. Maybe 5 to 6 months, and then he announces his main event, I guess call up by doing the Royal Rumble again or something like that. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see him be just a transitional champion to put that belt on Karrion Kross. And I think that they will be making the same mistake that they did with The Fiend when they put the belt on him too soon. And it just really just killed his character altogether. Either way, he looks fantastic in that main event. He looked like a killer, and that's what I'm here to see each and every week. Timothy Thatcher and Oney Lorcan, these two guys don't want to do anything else but beat the shit out of each other, and we're all going to sit and watch and enjoy it. This was another good match. It's a grappling first type of match, very catch wrestling based. I enjoy these types of matches. I enjoyed this match from start to finish. I like the finish where Oney Lorcan had a Kimura on Timothy Thatcher. I will never call it a double wrist lock. I don't give a fuck. I will. No, not doing it. He had a Kimura on Timothy Thatcher, and the way Timothy gets out of it is he uses that grip to pin Oney Lorcan, basically falling into side control, and like a white belt, Oney Lorcan held onto the arm instead of letting go to bridge and get out. But that was a great match. Let all of you people know right now, make it official. I've said this on social media a couple times already, but I am a fucking Bronson Reed guy. He was a part of the triple threat with him, Johnny Gargano, and Roderick Strong to see who's going to advance for the NXT North American title, and he killed it. I mean, I don't know what else to really say that hasn't been said this week about his performance, but he really excelled. He sold his ass off for these two small guys. He ate a nasty power bomb from the apron to the floor, and I was like, "Oh, that's it. He's dead. He ain't getting up from that." But he got up, and the way he got up and the way he re-entered the ring or the match itself was amazing. Gargano hits the one final beat on Roderick Strong. goes to pin him, he can only get like his arm across him, and out of nowhere, it's like a 1 count before Bronson Reed, excuse me, comes smashing down from the top with a big ass splash and pins Strong right there in the middle of the ring while Gargano was like, the splash was so big, it looked like Gargano basically bounced out of the picture, and I loved it. I'm here for Bronson Reed. He's different. He's a new individual. I love his look. I'm always a fan of people who just look different than everyone else. And I love the fact that they're pushing someone different. So I don't expect him to win the ladder match in any way, shape, or form. I think Finn Balor's going to win it, but I'm loving that they're giving him a solid mid card push so he can do something and he can show what he can do. There's other guys I would love to see on television too. Where's my boy Ricky Boogs? Please get him back on screen sometime soon instead of sitting there being in the crowd playing the air guitar. But Bronson Reed, I'm here for this guy every single day. Sheldon Benjamin is your 24/7 champion. He joins the Hurt Business. Sign me up for this as well. I hope they're hinting at a Ron Simmons joining them too. I, I'm usually not one to say put all the black guys together in a group, but if you're going to put Shelton Benjamin, MVP, and Bobby Lashley together in a trio and have them beat the shit out of everybody, I'm going to sit here and nod my head at that every single day. Bobby Lashley should still be battling Drew McIntyre for the world title. It's funny how he loses one match and he's just like right out of the picture. Dolph comes in, who never wins, loses his match from Extreme Rules, and he's getting another shot, I think next week or in 2 weeks or something like that. It's like, why? Why? You got Bobby Lashley, who looks like a credible threat at any point in time, and he can only get one shot at the belt. It doesn't make any sense. Well, it makes all the sense to me, but we're not going to talk about that during today's show. But Shelton Benjamin, man, he looked good, and he's always looked good. Like Shelton Benjamin has never looked like he's lost a beat, lost a step. This man should have been world champion years ago. No one should be able to argue that point. I'm glad to see him still contributing at such a high level, and having him as a part of the Hurt Business. I am all here for that. Mustafa Ali is back because he was also a part of that match, and people are hyped about Mustafa Ali coming back. Everyone's been wondering where he's been, why he's been off TV for so long, and he's back, and he looks bigger, he looks ready to go. I mean, this dude, he should have a strong mid card run, and there's nothing that should stop that. I would love to see him in the main picture at some point in time. Let's see what that looks like. I love how he's already tweeting at Drew McIntyre, "Hey, I beat you in the King of the Ring, and I should get a title shot based off of that." Yes, yes, yes. Let me see that too, please. That could be a little mini feud for a couple of months. I know they would have a fucking killer match together too. So like, just let that happen. Like, I believe people would want to see Mustafa Ali in the main event picture. Another feud that I am interested in that just kind of popped up out of nowhere. I don't know if anyone watches Raw Talk. I don't know if people sit down and watch that after Monday Night Raw. Probably not, because people aren't really watching Raw to begin with. But Seth Rollins and R-Truth had a back and forth on that show that I wrote about this week. And if you watch it, it was nothing really to make big out of. But R-Truth and Seth Rollins have never had a singles match. That kind of stood out to me because I did a little bit of digging to see if that was the case. And according to Cage Match, they've only been involved in multiple man matches like battle royales and stuff like that. So I would love to see these two have a mini feud, maybe a match at SummerSlam. It doesn't have to be anything extensively long, but don't forget, R-Truth can go. He's 48 years old, but he can go. He's the first African American actually to hold the NWA world title. He's fought John Cena for that WWE title in 2011. He's done a lot of things, and the joke gimmick, I get it. I get a little bit upset with him always being a joke character. I understand, but the dude can still go, and I would love to see him put on a 15-minute match or something like that with Seth Rollins. I think it would be exceptional, and Seth already looks good. He makes everybody that he's in the ring with look good, and I think that will translate over to R-Truth as well. And we'll get a reminder of just how special this guy is, because he's been contributing for years on end. The last two things from Raw I want to talk about was first Ruby Riott getting her first win since I think March maybe of 2019. She posted a big long Instagram post about it, and you could tell some of it was in kayfabe, some of it wasn't. But I am a like just like I'm a Bronson Reed guy, I'm a Ruby Riott guy too as well. I'm a fan of hers. I think she's special. She always reminds like she kind of reminds me of Luna Vachon, and I think that's a fantastic thing because Luna was a hell of a worker. She was a hell of a personality in professional wrestling, and Ruby Riott is something special. She should have already have been a WWE Women's Champion at some point in time. Unfortunately, she has not been. She had a double shoulder surgery last year, which kept her out for most of the year. But I'm a fan of Ruby Riott, and I hope we get to see her do something great. I'm expecting that Liv comes back and they form a team, and I hope that that team allows them to win the women's tag team titles, and then we see some more from there. Speaking of women's tag team titles, Kyrie Zane seems to be on her way out, and WWE is trying to do all they can to keep her, but they can't. It just seems like she's going back to Japan, and she picked up a big win over Bayley on Friday, pinning her shoulders to the mat. And I hope she doesn't go. I wish that we would have gotten that either that Kyrie Zane versus Asuka match or the trios with her, Io, and Asuka. That's never happened. If she leaves, it probably will never happen. I hope they figure out a way to get her to stay. But let's see what happens because according to multiple outlets like Sean Ross Sapp, for example, they're doing all they can to really keep her. I don't want to see her go. So we're going to turn our eye over to AEW and talk about their content from this week. I watched AEW Dark. I did not take any notes other than the fact that Scorpio Sky won and Ricky Starks won. That's all I give a fuck about. Neither one of those guys should be on Dark as often as they are, but you know, at least they're getting time in the ring, unlike some other individuals. AEW continues to win because they've built a plan and they're sticking to it. I'm looking forward to their card next week. I probably will watch it right after the show goes off, or watch it the next day to figure out how I want to do that. I have the TNT app I just downloaded, but with all those matches that they've announced, sign me up for that. And they promote in such a grand fashion, not a grand fashion, but in such a way that allows them to cultivate people's interest. As a marketer, you know, that's my 9 to 5. I appreciate that and I get behind that. So that's exactly one of the reasons why they're winning. And that's why their content doesn't seem as stale as WWE's. It just doesn't. And I'm here for it. I don't watch them first. I have a listener question about that, but yeah, I'll save that for the listener question. Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston is probably the biggest thing coming out of this week. He was the special guest challenger for Cody, and man, there's something special about Kingston. I will admit I was not too familiar with him until NWA this year or last year, whenever NWA started, and I was watching that platform. I watched it pretty consistently until Jim Cornette fucked up, and then I flipped back onto it as well for a little while before the pandemic hit. Eddie Kingston is a legit dude. He's only 38, and he just looks gutter with it, yo. Like he is a less dangerous version of New Jack, but he's like this generation's version of New Jack, just grimy as fuck. Like, yo, you're gonna have to. He walks out there and calls for the TNT Championship Open Challenge, and he's like, "Fuck this shit, let's make it no DQ. We got thumbtacks, we got all types of foolishness out here, and this dude can go." And it's the shot of him sitting on the ramp after losing, this dejected, lets you know like how much it meant for him to be in that match and win and potentially win that match, and what losing it means for him. So I am here for that 110% of the time, and I appreciate that. And I'm just a fan. I popped for him being included. I also popped for Ricky Starks joining Brian Cage. Now that happened, Brian Cage and Taz. That happened on Dark the night before when they beat up who did they beat up? Darby Allin? No. So yeah, they beat up Darby Allin, but then they beat his ass again on Dynamite. I'm here for that all day, every day. Next week we're getting a tag match, a tornado tag match too. with Jon Moxley and Darby Allin versus Ricky Starks and Brian Cage. I will make sure to see that match. Ricky Starks makes me want to see Brian Cage. I'll put it that way. I had no interest in Brian Cage at all. Ricky Starks has been like he's one of those guys I've mentioned in the past that when they're on TV, I will turn the channel. Him, Pac, Ray Phoenix, who else? Big Swole. It's probably about it for AEW right now. That would make me stop and flip the channel. And I'm here for everything that they do. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with them next. Yeah, I expect Ricky Starks to be the first guy out of that tornado tag. Like, let's be real. Ivelisse, she had a match, and I wonder if she'll stick around. She's been someone that's been typecast as having a bad attitude. I don't know too much about her, but she, like I said, I've read about her in that sense. That's how she's been typecast. I don't know. I think she should get a second chance. If Tessa Blanchard is getting multiple chances, I don't understand why people like Leo Rush, ACH, and Ivelisse can't get multiple chances as well too. I mean, I understand because they're people of color, we don't get multiple chances, but we can only hope for the best, right? But she had a match against Diamante. I thought she was gonna win this match, but Diamante won it, and she's facing Hikaru Shida next week. That kind of caught me off guard because I figured the reason why they had Diamante win on Dark on Tuesday was because they wanted her to look like a stronger opponent coming into the match with Ivelisse. So when she lost, it could look, I mean, she wouldn't be an 0-4 wrestler. She would be a 1-4. Now she's 2-4, getting a shot at the belt. AEW needs to do something about those win-loss records too as well, but that's another conversation we'll probably talk about on another show. But I'm surprised that Ivelisse lost this match. Very surprised. Diamante is who she is. I thought Ivelisse was being booked as someone special, and I thought that was going to be the case, but I guess not. So, speaking of women's wrestling, they also announced a women's tag team cup. Now, there's one space where WWE is trouncing AEW, and that is with their women's division. There's no one on God's green earth that would argue AEW has that space won. Not when you look at AEW or WWE's women's roster. I mean, from top to bottom. Becky, Sasha, Charlotte, Bayley, Asuka. Those five right there are better than anyone on the AEW roster. Period. Any woman on that roster. Period. They're just better than them. And then when you throw in names like Tegan Nox, Dakota Kai, Mercedes Martinez, you throw in Bianca Belair, you throw in Ruby Riott, you throw in Kyrie Zane, who's still there, Io Shirai. I mean, that roster right there alone is ridiculous. You still have fucking Candice LeRae, forgot about her, Kaden Carter, you have Raquel Gonzalez, you have so many names on that roster that it's not even fair. But AEW, and something else AEW is doing is that they're not like they can have. You might get one women's match on Dark and one women's match on Dynamite, and that's it. WWE is definitely giving more, at least on NXT, giving more women's wrestling. I don't really see that's not happening. I'm not even gonna say I don't see that. That's just not happening on Raw and SmackDown, but I do expect that to change. So AEW, they're doing a women's tag team cup, and I'm more interested in the pairings of the women than the matches themselves. I'm interested in seeing who they put together and what matches that they bring out. I almost wish that they did a women's singles tournament so you can see more of them instead of just throwing them in the tag teams and trying to get them all on TV in that fashion, because that doesn't solve the problem. Like, I think that, yes, you have that tag team cup going on, but Britt Baker, Hikaru Shida, Big Swole, and Reba should be nowhere near it. They should be dealing with their shit before before having to do with anything in a tag team. I just think that that's ridiculous. So those are all my comments in reference to AEW Dark or AEW content this week, Dynamite and Dark. I'm going to move over to two listener questions that I have, and they're pretty simple questions. The first one is in reference to the triple threat matches for the entrance spot into the NXT North American ladder matches going on at TakeOver in a few weeks, I think next month. So, three names I would like to see in that are Kushida. I saw something the other day, and Kushida was being listed as like, what happened to this guy? He's one of the best wrestlers in the world, and he just vanished. And I was like, yo, WWE creative happened to him. Kushida's that guy. He's like the ultimate ringer. You can dust him off, throw him in a match, he'll give you a 5-star match, like with one hand tied behind his back. His matches in the cruiserweight round robin tournament were fantastic. All of his matches were fantastic, and I loved every single one of them. You could have thrown him in there with anyone, and it would be exceptional. It's unfortunate the way WWE is using him. If they put him in one of these triple threats, I think he could win it and end up in the ladder match, but I don't see him winning that there, but I would love to see him involved. The next one is Timothy Thatcher. So Timothy Thatcher is in the match next week. I cannot remember who the third guy is. It's him, Finn Balor, and one other person. But they're fighting for an opportunity to be in that match as well, or in the ladder match. I think Finn's going to win next week, but I would love to see Tim Thatcher in there using that ladder to break people's limbs. And speaking of breaking limbs, we have Pete Dunne. Now he's in wherever the hell he is, London, I guess. And he's not going to be able to travel to the United States. I get that. But I would love to see Pete Dunne in one of the triple threat matches and in a ladder match as well too. The second question is, do I ever see myself as someone who would switch from AEW viewership to WWE and watch that, or excuse me, switch from WWE to AEW? And I do not know the answer to that question right now. Like, I feel like it's a solid no, just because WB has been what I've been watching for so long, and there's things about AEW I just don't like. I'm tired of all of these old managers. I love Taz, but Taz is the manager, Arn, Tully, Jake Roberts. Now we have Vicky Guerrero. I'm like, I'm good on all that. I'm not the biggest fans of the Elite. Maybe as individuals, Adam Page and Omega, but I'm not a fan of that group. I will watch Pac all day, every day, but he's not there. Ray Phoenix and Pentagon. Pentagon, I'm a little bit over him as well too, but Ray Phoenix, that's my guy. The Inner Circle, no, anything, especially since Jake Hager's involved, fuck that guy all the way. And I'm just not fully invested into their product yet, but I make sure I will catch it post show. Um, they have some good things, they have some bad things, but I'm not at the point quite yet where I think I will watch them first over WWE. Plus, I get paid to watch WWE content because I do some written pieces on them 3 times a week. So yeah, there's that. But anyway, that is our show for today. We've gone about 30 minutes of me talking about professional wrestling, and yeah, my name is Raphael Garcia. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this show that you can find on MMAratings.net. That is our flagship there where all of our written content goes up. You can follow MMA Ratings Net on Instagram and YouTube for those platform or those distributions. You can follow me at rgarcia_sports, where I'm always talking about pro wrestling, MMA, combat sports, Black Lives Matter, and everything in between. And you can follow this show on Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Apple iTunes, and Google Podcasts. With that in mind, enjoy your weekend, everyone. Stay safe, wear your mask, and remember Black Lives Matter.